thought pretty was a four-letter word. Yeah. The folks all knew it was true. The line between good and bad was not blurred. Well, my mama said, son, if there's one thing.
The world of politics is a dirty game, and I think most people know that when they start a campaign. But there's also a line that should be drawn well before any candidate or supporter threatens the livelihood of a challenger. Without question, this was the goal of Councilman Frank Ferry's letter to Kevin Korenthal's employer, and it is despicable on multiple fronts. Ferry clearly spoke for the entire city in his letter. He questions what our elected city officials did to offend Kevin's employer, claimed Korenthal launched an attack on us, the city, and uses letterhead to endorse his friend Ed Cawley for CLWA. I appreciate that Ferry's letter is being reviewed, but I expect much more. Mr. Ferry has clearly violated our ethics code again, and I am calling on the city tonight to meet its obligation to censure him. In these difficult times, it's no exaggeration to say that dragging someone's employer into the mix or publicly smearing one's professional character could literally devastate a man's family. Ferry has done this for political sport on city letterhead. Please explain to your public how such a letter would ever be okay. And if I sound particularly angry about this, it's because I am. Remember last February when Ferry told me during the council campaign that his team had opposition research on me and that I was going to learn the hard way. Remember, Ferry laughed it off and said it was all a joke. That very report was mailed to clients, business leaders, and press outlets across our city on June 1st, 1 month after the election was over. The profound coincidence is that this 45-page dossier of my background was dated January 25th, 2010, exactly 1 day before Ferry made his remarks to me in these chambers. Included was an unsigned cover letter that claimed to be from a former business associate who I had supposedly burned, a further attempt to ruin me professionally and politically after the election. Interestingly, a second letter that was also unsigned was delivered the next day to the entire Canyon Theater Board and many other community leaders, this one calling for the firing of fellow council challenger Tim Ben Boydston. Also unsigned, it was the same typeface and the same author. I can't prove that Ferry mailed these letters, but the date on the opposition research makes his involvement in the smear campaign inescapable. In this latest attack on Korenthal, Ferry was dumb enough to put his name on the city letterhead and let it fly. What an absolutely horrible thing to do to a man who is out there running an honest race, and to put his family at risk is reprehensible. Anyone reading that letter would believe that this filth came from our city. Obviously, Ferry doesn't care, but he deserves a formal reprimand. Korenthal is a good man, and he deserves a fair shot at running for office in our town, just like me and just like Boydston. As for you, Mr. Ferry, my grandmother told me a long time ago, you can't polish a turd. Thank you.
You can't polish a turd. You can't polish a turd. Yeah!
You know, as I began to think about it a little bit more, I realized that this is probably more an issue of the type of person or what Frank Ferry does for a living. As a school principal, it's in his nature to do something like this. I just think he addressed it incorrectly. The letter should have began, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Korenthal, little Kevin was playing rough on the schoolyard today." Well, Frank, you know, you're not my principal. ABC, the company that I am associated with, are not my parents. In fact, they're not my employers. The Associated Builders and Contractors, which I have painstakingly worked to keep out of my campaign, is an organization of my colleagues that look to me to be a good representative in the areas where I live and where I do advocacy on behalf of their issues. Rather than really threatening my employment, this issue has caused some of my colleagues to lose a little bit of faith in me. I've had to spend many hours on the phone with these folks, explaining to them the situation as it has transpired. I had to explain to them, for instance, that rather than I bringing ABC into this campaign, my opponent, Ed Cawley, has actually printed the name Associated Builders and Contractors and called me a lobbyist on his campaign materials. How inappropriate is that? And it just seems a little bit coincidental, or maybe not coincidental, that that's followed up with this letter saying that I'm bringing ABC into my campaign. Well, I don't need ABC to fight my battles. What I fear is that if these types of activities are going to keep happening, we're going to see situations develop where the community disengages because they feel that if they get out there and speak their word, or if they run for public office, someone's going to shoot them down or try to get them fired from their jobs. Well, when that happens, years later, you become Bell, California. And I just don't want to see that happen. I'm not as angry as I was the day that that letter was received. I wish, Frank, you would have taken the opportunity to print that in an op-ed or to call me up and discuss your problems with me. I just don't want to see anyone else ever have to deal with this problem again. Don't send letters to people's employers when you disagree with them. Contact them directly. Thank you.